Hi, I'm Bill Patton with 720 Degree Coaching, and it is my distinct pleasure to host a square table or round table with Dave Smith, Richard
Hello.
Bowie, and Neri. Did I say it right? I did. Okay. And the topic of the conversation today is going to center around Dave's article that he wrote for Tennis Business Newsletter. And if you are not getting that newsletter, then contact Rich Neher, N-E-H-E-R, and get on that newsletter because it's really one of the most influential things in the sport right now. But this conversation is going to have some ground rules to it. One, we're going to really try to keep it focused on Dave's article, and so Dave is going to kind of help us stay on track that way. Two, we want to keep it as positive as possible. We want to make sure that we're talking about things that can realistically be done. And three, we want to we want to use objective observations about what's happening or what has happened without subjective judgments. So if you're listening to this and you're somebody who's working on the inside of an organization and you're sort of feeling under attack, this is not that. We are not here to attack anybody. We're just here to say, hey, we have some ideas. We want to be positive. We want to bat some ideas around. We want to go point, counterpoint, and empower you. So here's what I want to do. I just want to go around the circle here and have everybody introduce themselves. I myself have been a teaching pro for 30 years and am the author of 11 books and have been a volunteer with the USTA. And then also, a committee chair. And also I am a lifetime USTA member. So UJ, can you give us a little bit about who you are and your background?
Hi, UJ Neri, tennis pro at Lucknow Flint Ridge Country Club, USPTA member and advisor as well. You just finished taking the USTA Player Development High Performance Coaching Cert, and just a local tennis pro at a country club. I teach outside of the club at people's houses around Los Angeles, and a big advocate helping inner city kids with some nonprofit organizations as a coach when we have monthly events to bring in kids at inner city kids at the Riviera Country Club, and then do a half a day of coaching kids in the inner city. And just well connected within the Los Angeles tennis community.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Richard.
I'm a high performance coach out here in New York City. Similar to usually, I think I completed USTA High Performance Coaching Program back in 2017. Primarily work independently, do a lot of work with USTA Eastern as a faculty coach, as well as a national coach. My experience or my involvement coaching goes from me running a schools program all the way to some really high level players.
Terrific, thank you. All right, and Dave the legend, you get to introduce yourself again and give just cut your resume down by like 90%.
I'll say a couple things. One, I am wearing a USTA hat.
Okay.
I am in full support. 40 years in the industry, 38 seasons of high school coach, director of tennis clubs, academies, 2 books on tennis, 300 articles, and 5 DVDs out. So luckily I've been around virtually every part of the industry. So I am a USPTA Elite Pro P1 and certainly have been involved in the tennis industry in virtually every element or every side of it.
Okay, awesome. All right, now, one of the things I would like you to do, because the camera skips around to people who make a noise, right? So if you're not talking, if you could mute your mic, that'd be great. And then the camera stays on the speaker a little bit better. Makes a little bit better presentation. All right. So, Dave, let's kick it off. How many things did you cover in the article? Why don't you give us a very brief overview of the article? And then what we'll do is we'll cut it up and we'll kind of go topic by topic. So,
all right. Well, definitely because of the pandemic, the coronavirus, the lockdown, I saw an opportunity to at least take a step back and really evaluate things from a USTA standpoint, from my perspective, as well as many people that I've talked to and heard from through social media, emails, and whatnot. So the many different elements were obviously things such as why people are complaining. Why was there such, my biggest concern is if I was running a company, I'd want to know if I was being successful, or if I'm not being successful, why am I not? Why are people dissatisfied? And if we look at the numbers, I looked at obviously the last 30 years, the USTA's mission statement was not really being met. And the mission statement was to grow tennis. So I broke it down into several things, but I'll leave it at that idea that there were many broad spectrum things that we'll look at one at a time. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, see, I'm supposed to pay attention to these things. But all right, so what's the first issue that we should talk about? I mean, should we talk a little bit about the mission of the USTA?
Well, that was the first thing I did cover, and I'd like you, Jay, and Rich, to maybe jump on this, because we've all been involved with USTA. I've ran USTA tournaments in California, Arizona, and Utah. I've been involved. We do see the value, the positive things that the USTA has been successful in doing. The area that I initially started was to look at their mission statement. In bold letters, it is to promote and develop the growth of tennis. So if that's my mission statement, am I really doing everything within the power and the structure and the reach of that entity, our only national board, that is really looking at tennis in a really objective way to grow the sport? Or are we only looking at things that benefit one entity, or in this case, the USTA? If it doesn't benefit them, are they truly interested in helping grow that part of tennis so that hopefully it trickles down into helping the USTA and growing the sport exponentially?
Okay, I want to comment on that first, because and I'm going to try to use examples from my own life. I know what it's like to make a realization that the things that I said were my goals weren't really my goals. So, right. and the example was when I was teaching school. Mentally, I assented to the idea that a classroom should be a place of order where teaching can occur, right? But I didn't have a deep enough commitment that I was the person that needed to make that happen. Somehow I thought that existed somewhat outside of myself. And so when I came to the realization that I have this mental idea of something I'm trying to aspire to, but I'm not bringing the level of commitment and conviction to it that I need to bring in order to make that happen, and taking full responsibility for the fact that I'm the one who sets the tone. I make it happen. And when I made that shift, then I was a much more successful classroom teacher and coach on the court. Because now, if things aren't meeting my expectations, then it's up to me to make it different. All right, so I want to hear from those, who wants to go next, you, Jay, or Richard? You got something you want to chime in on? All right, so Richard. All right, so
I was gonna give you Jay to go ahead on that one.
No, he has nothing at the moment. He shook his head. So Richard, it's you.
Right, just out of the floor. You know, you speak about the USTA as one singular, and we know it's made up of different sections. And I think, you know, we've mentioned the pandemic, and it's a great comparison between the two, that we have the federal government and we have the governors. So I think when we're speaking USTA, I've recently been in even some meetings where I've seen such major disparity with the governing of each section and within one room, how different things are. So I have a hard time when people say the USTA. Yes, I think there is a literal meaning of growing the game, and then there's some stats there that show there hasn't been much growth, but there's also a responsibility USTA to actually, like, at least stabilize where it is, because we're, you know, each sporting governing body is kind of competing with one another to make their sport more relevant, more practical. So it's kind of held true even with a changing world. So that's something that we've taken into account. So I'm more critical of even sometimes the tennis professionals, the leaders, the directors who don't evolve. And as a result, I feel that locally or within their region, they've made the sport themselves stagnant. You know, I see it every day. I go this hurdle, and I think that, you know, tennis coaches and directors, or sometimes they evolve too slowly, and I think that holds back, stunts our growth as a tennis. So we can't just keep always, you know, like throwing the dagger at the USTA national. That is their responsibility. Well,
yeah.
You know, I could tell you what, tennis. I could tell you a couple people where tennis is booming. I can show you this disparity between 3 clubs no more than 3 miles apart, and why one has 200 campers and one has 20, because they're doing things so different. So I'll stop there.
Okay, I love your comment. I absolutely love it. Okay, so I think what I take from what you just said is the power of one, right? So our avatar, the person that we're speaking to right here, is the person who will listen and evolve. They will take this to heart, and they'll become one more person that does it the right way. So you're absolutely right. We make the USTA into this monolith. It's this windmill, and we charge at it like, you know, who's the guy who charges at the windmills, right? So I forget the name right now, but, you know, it's an easy target, because we can just go, you know, blame, monolith. But really it comes down to people. So I'll give you an example, and I'm going to toot my own horn for a second. As soon as I heard the word pandemic, right, I immediately shifted everything I do, because I was like, wait a minute, you know, all of a sudden now, what do people need? People need leadership. People need engagement. People need leaders to show their face and give the right messaging. But not only, it's not just messaging, it's messaging of reality. It's objectives, it's things to do, it's ways to capitalize on the situation. So I saw a number of people who stepped up and put their face out there, and they got criticism for it, but they put themselves out there. And so I want to reach out to anybody who's watching this and say, do that too. Put yourself out there, take a risk, show leadership, put your face on it, get ready. You're gonna get some flaming arrows back at you. Take them out, break them in half, throw them on the ground, and keep going.
I agree. Let me kind of make a comment on that, because it's a great segue into looking at the different divisions of the USTA, but they are still under the umbrella of the national board who makes certain decisions. And I found this out I was speaking at several USTA coaching conventions, and the actual USTA board members of those conventions were afraid to make waves that went against what the national board was trying, or what direction they were moving. So while each and several divisions are very successful. Some are not as successful, just like we see in the USPTA and the PTR and different things like that, how involved. And like you said, Bill, it really comes down to the people. But ultimately, if there's a national board, they're the ones that pull the strings that allow those divisions to be either autonomous or move forward or hold them back. And that's my fear, is that there are certain things that, and people certainly said very clearly they were afraid to say anything in fear of losing their position within the USTA. And that to me is a red flag. So I would love to see, I mean, as I mentioned in the article, I want the USTA to succeed. I want to see the USTA to be not just incredibly successful, but broadly successful. And that was the intent of the article in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, let me help you. I can't say truthfully for a fact that I know one board member, and I won't even name names if I think they're on the board of USTA. I don't know how much governance or how much impact the board actually has on the, we talk about we're in the grassroots. So when you start talking about, coaching in clubs and, coaching in clubs or communities or volunteer service, even high school, to me, I think we're at you're talking about the grassroots level of tennis. And I think that the management of that really comes from, it could be down to your TSR or your director for your section within there. So I don't know, because boards, yes, I get it. I think the more higher become more political it gets, right? You go in, it's just talking. They're not. It happens at corporate level, and they're not in the sand like we are. They're not on ground level. There are no boots on the floor, and they're making these decisions, which may be a lot about where large pools of money go. But I read in your article, you think that they're not being supportive. I can raise my hand and say, my TSR, my section has been pretty. We lost there. My TSR has been pretty supportive. I have two. In some of the stuff we've done, they've kind of been active, they've been visible, and supporting my community program. I've been able to get funds to support initiatives I have. So that's why when I read the article, I was like, wow. But I tell you this, from being in a room with people who are on the staff of the USTA in different sections, everything varies. I know you said you were in Utah for a period of time, which is that Intermountain?
Correct.
Is that an Intermountain section? And
yep.
I deal with players, I deal with competitive players who come in and give you a totally different perspective of how their competitive world is compared to how Eastern is. So I think that's something. I've been fortunate enough that I've especially spent a lot of time traveling and going to different venues, events, and clubs in different sections or regions, and just really getting a sense of how different things are. And this February at a symposium was a big awakening. I had to put people back into perspective, because I realized that even though we were running these certain things in our section, the others were just like, they were non-existent. And that was the whole purpose of the symposium. So we always got to, I think we have to start from the bottom. I think we need to discuss if I had to ask you who's your TSR, I think it's a bit your responsibility. I would say it's our responsibility to go out there and know. You made a mention in your article. You said that no one came to us, and there was a big saying about if you want it, you got to kind of seek it. And I mean, I kind of wish I had early in my career. I'm not even been in that long. Know more about the opportunities that are there, and I share them with other people.
Yeah,
go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I definitely want to go next because but I'll hand off to you in a second. I love that point. So now if we say, all right, that part of the conversation was for the teaching pro or the high school coach, don't sit back and wait for the USTA to come to you, right? Go to them, call them up. Hey, I'm running a program here. What can you do for me? How can we work together? Are there some programs that I can promote, right? So, when I was the director at a particular club, I reached out to my local section, and I was on the phone once or twice a month with the junior player development manager, and we would bat some ideas around, and then he knew he had somebody who would pilot a program if he wanted to try something out. I was always a ready person to do that. I think also though, and this is, I'm going to try to be as objective as I can about this because this is just the real truth. Having served on committees, I think one thing I would like to see people do is sort of drop their ambition to climb the ladder and put their stamp on things and get credit for having done something, and instead put all of their energy into collaborating with the team and coming up with the best solutions for the most people. So late last year, I had somebody from my section approach me because he's the chair of a committee and he wanted me to participate in a high school tennis initiative. And I told him straight out, I said, if there's going to be political BS, count me out, right? And and I said, I gave him some really strong recommendations. Here are 3 things you could do to really make an incredible impact on high school tennis. And if any or all of those 3 work for you, I'm all in. But if you're not going to go that direction, then count me out. I don't have time or energy for that because I can't buy into anything other than one or all of these 3 things. And so as it turned out, then who else got on this thing but the coaches of the elite schools in the area? And here I was trying to say, look, go to this particular city that's having a really hard time establishing high school tennis and invest money and manpower into helping that city grow its high school tennis, and you will get so much great PR and you will change lives. You will save lives of children. But nope.
Well, let me comment real quick. I'll keep this short because I do believe Rich was correct, and you're correct in terms of reaching out to your TSR, your USTA board, or whatever. A lot of high school coaches don't know how to do that. It's not that hard. I mean, obviously the USTA website's there. However, what's the mission statement of the USTA? To grow the game. If the mission statement is to grow the game, my question is, why are we passing the buck to a high school coach who may or may not have a lot of background in tennis, first of all? Second of all, in a rural area that may be far away from a big city. We're so far south of Salt Lake City that I've never even met our TSR. I think I talked to him one time on the phone. And so if the mission statement of the USTA is to grow the game, then why would it be the responsibility, and I'm not discounting the responsibility of coaches, but why are we having to search out who our TSR is? How can we get a grant? How can we get funding? How can we do this? It's a very intimidating, especially a non-tennis, industry leader. We are all in the industry, but a coach who doesn't. So my recommendation is, yes, it does go both ways. But to simply say it's the responsibility of the whiny coach who's like, nobody's here to help me, I don't know what to do. Okay, but why is USTA at least not sending a letter saying, here's your TSR representative and who can help you? At least that would be a minimum, I think. That would be in the right step.
If I guess got your history clear, I know that you've been highly successful in the high school department, and we've kind of thrown the word objective and built. The data doesn't really support so much that from the USDA's perspective or as an industry leader, that participation in players in the high school level is not really that good. So, I think, like you said, throwing the buck at the high school coach, I mean, and this is not to discredit you, because I think you've done a fantastic job. Your records and your numbers, stand for themselves, but there's some logistics there. There's some logistics there that also, as I hear Intermountain, I can imagine the TSR probably, I don't know, having to drive maybe 50 miles to come and see you may not seem so practical. And I'm in a big city, and everyone's a little more, bunched up. And I feel like what happens with most coaches when they don't get the credit or the attention that maybe a coach to yourself probably deserve. It's kind of like, okay, screw them. It becomes like I'm not going to reach out to them anymore. And I mean, it varies, and I can sense and see that maybe you've not been dealt with fairly. I can just say, on the other hand, even my section, Eastern, we've been treated very fairly. I think we have active TSR, so I think it's important. Manny, your role, maybe you should have stepped up and have been a little more involved on the USTA, not just volunteer, really having a big impact at Intermountain. I met a player from there in Alabama, and they had a lot of nice things to say about it, but they told me logistics are very difficult. She has no one to compete with, so that's my understanding of how it is in Colorado and Utah. That you got someone here, you got to drive 2 hours to get someone about your level. So I think that's also the numbers, because allocation of funds. It's kind of like it's what do you call it? Oh my God, elections. Help me out here. Whatever.
Demographics.
It's like electoral college. It's like electoral college kind of thing. Like delegates. It's like, oh well, because I've heard our section gets well funded because our numbers are really high, but we have. Just in New York City alone, we have like 12 million people. So I think, it's unfortunate you're just in Utah. Maybe you should have just,
Dave needs to move. Wait, Dave, let me get into there. Okay, so you said data, and here's some really important data points. The USTA has somewhere around 800,000 members. That seems to me to be a curiously low number. And then there are 348,000 high school players. So that's humongous. I mean, I think it's less than 60,000 a year play junior tournaments nationwide. I don't know that number for sure, but 348,000 high school tennis players. So if every year we were able to grab those 80,000 or more graduating seniors and keep them engaged, that's huge. And if in the front end we could feed that and actually promote high school tennis and help every coach add 1 or 2 or 5 more players to their team every year, then that number would be way over 350,000 easily. But unfortunately, high school tennis gets almost no help from the USTA, and so I mean, there's no way around that. I mean, and I know that there are exceptions to that. So Richard, you make a really good point that it's we're looking at it globally, but of course there are pockets where people are doing it really well, and that TSR is on the road, and if they can't be on the road, they're on the phone. But yeah. Sitting behind the desk and sending out a monthly email is not the way.
Well, there's 2 things. One, you have to remember, Rich, I come from California. I competed both high school and college in California. I had the top team in the U.S. in California at one point. I moved to Arizona and was in Phoenix for 6 years and been in Utah for 22 years. So I've been in 3 states. So my background is pretty diverse, and I'm speaking from a very objective response because in all 3 states, I've never met my TSR, ever. Now, of course, the TSR may have come in later. That organizing component may have come in later after I left California. But that being said, I agree with Bill in that that's where we have 350,000 high school players. Outside of the USTA, that's the largest junior development of players, period. We have them play for 4 years if they come out as a freshman. These kids are going to play tennis for the rest of their life. Maybe not competitively, as most won't, in terms of college or tournament tennis. But my team, which I average 45 players a team, boys and girls, half of them play USTA tournaments at my encouragement. That means half of them are USTA members. That means half of them travel and spend money and buy rackets and take lessons or more. So again, going back to my original statement, if the mission statement of the USTA is to grow tennis, and they're ignoring this 350,000 number as not significant or not valuable, I think there's failure there. I don't mean that negatively. I just mean I think there can be a lot more done in terms of developing coaches who can do A, no-cut program, B, train more players, how to attract more players, how to successfully. I've had the largest teams in 3 states, and I've had the top teams in all 3 states. So large teams does not predicate not being competitive. We were the best. So I'm going to say there's one area that I think the USTA could turn that corner and say, let's see if we can do a better job getting involved in that segment and see if we can recognize their value, help those coaches, provide some sort of leadership or resource.
I have 2 points. Dave, you're totally correct. I mean, am I on mute?
Yeah, I can hardly hear you.
You got me now?
A little better.
Okay. 2 points. You're right. You're totally correct, Dave. But the thing is, the TSR in Southern California, they won't help you if you don't go to them. But these TCR reps, I mean, I have some of these nonprofit organizations leaders are mentoring my name to these TCR reps to help me get involved. But they're not being proactive. And also, we have to go to them personally, then we'll get something out of them, or we need nets or rackets and stuff like that to help grow the game for your organization or whatever club or foundation you're from. That's when they start moving. But they just need to be more active. I believe with the high school coaches, these are all part-time science teachers, history teachers. I just believe that USTA needs to reach out to all the high school coaches that they need to get certified. And then they need to know how to teach kids and groups and stuff like that. Because I think it's just basically a 3-month extra paycheck for some coaches. But there are some high school coaches that are USPTA and PTR. But the other half are all the history and science teachers that if they're not certified, get certified. And that's also part of growing the game. And then another percentage that there's a big drop off that I told Bill earlier, after they graduate, only the number 1, number 2 player actually move on to play tennis at a higher level. It could be D2, or D3. Very 0.2% actually goes to a D1, you know. But the thing is, I'm also an assistant coach for a community college on the women's team, and I'm trying to get workshops or combines for girls to come to try out for us. And I'm looking into the inner city and trying to do a combine or workshop to get our numbers, participation numbers, to try out for a community college, because there's some good junior colleges that could be D3 and D2 and 3 colleges, and now
and D1s
possibly. And then now 2-year colleges are tuition free. Community colleges or city colleges are tuition free. Now I'm trying to portray to the Southern Cal USTA. I want to be on that committee to help kids and parents, to let them know that, they can save money 2 years and then build up their UTR and then transfer to a D3 or D2. And then, and then these coaches, that's the coaches those coaches need players that already have a college experience, instead of a kid that just came out of high school. That's more valuable. They'll be put in the lineup quicker than a kid that they're giving up a scholarship that's going to sit on the bench, unless they're not the top 5 in the state. So
okay, I have 2 player profiles to share with you. All right. So one of them's this kid, Aaron, who was so quiet, I didn't even notice him until the end of his sophomore year, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm watching this kid play because he's on my JV, and he's playing a match that's right in front of me, so I have to pay attention to him. And I'm like, this kid's smart. I mean, he's just placing the ball where he wants. Nothing flashy about his strokes, but really smart player, understands the geometry of the court. I'm like, this kid's pretty bright. So it's like, I kind of started pushing him, and then he moved up, and as a junior, he played higher on the ladder. He was like number 2 doubles. Then he had a fire lit under him, and he all of a sudden got the bug, and he came out and he did the full summer junior program, and he became the number 2 player on the team and went 15-1 and was the team captain for a team that sort of miraculously won a championship. Then he went on to play community college for 2 years.
There you go.
And now he is a 5-0 level player, right?
And so, then like they can play.
Let me finish. And here's the other one. Another one comes to me. He's 13 years old, and he's kind of uncoordinated. He has lots of bad habits, and man, it was such hard work to get this kid sorted out, right? He plays high school tennis. He's okay. He 4 years later, he works his way up to number 1 player on the team, plays 2 years of community college. Now he's a director of tennis at a club.
There it is.
And
that's
so,
how you grow the game.
So those, and that's how you do it. And then then what you do is you become like the grandfather of another generation of kids, because you train somebody who loves the game so much, and they see how you make it fun, and then they want to do it, and they make it fun. And now, and here's what I always tell people: Vic Braden was absolutely right. He said, if there are no 4-5s at your club, it's your fault. And the key and the fault of a lot of people is we're so focused on that D1 and that future pro that we're so focused on, is this kid a D1 prospect or are they going to be pro, that we forget about the 99% of kids that could become a 4-0, 4-5, 5-0 level player at a club and keep that club alive.
But that's my argument. I'm like, there's a big drop off of kids. The kids that are not the number 1 player, the 3, 4, the 3, 4, 5th player on the team, they stop playing tennis after they finish high school, even though they didn't develop well. They didn't beat the number 1 player. That number 1 player went to SC or UCLA. But that number, the number 3,
what kind of
number
high school
4
team is that?
In Southern Cal, we have all the products, But the thing is, I've touched kids that are the number 1, number 2 player on the team. They go to play D2, D1, but I still have to pay attention to the number 4, number 3 player, number 4 player that they can get on at a community college and play in mid lineup. So I'm like, I'm trying to be on those committees where playing community college, transfer out, and that keeps it growing, because that's a whole market that USTA is not catering. They're publicizing all these D1 players, the top 5 players.
Right. Got it. Okay, Yuji, I'm going to cut you off for a second. All right. So see, we're talking about the same thing, and what I'm telling you is they started low on the ladder and we developed them, right? So now, we totally agree. But here's what I want to do. I want to send it back to Dave because I think we fleshed that whole thing out really well. So
no worries.
We got a few minutes left, right? So Dave, what's another thing that we can dig into here together?
Definitely, you guys hit on that aspect, but I will say it is those lower level kids, if you train them well, they'll be lifetime players. And that's one thing I tell my 45th player, if I have a team of 45 or however many, that they will be a skilled player for the rest of their life. We don't look at it as, well, we're training you to be a Division I, Division II, Division III player. So just as a caveat to what you guys were saying, I look at the bigger picture, and this is where I think the USTA benefits, is that these are the players who will become the league players, the 3-0, 3-5, 4-0, 4-5 league players and club players and so on and so forth. I think, going back to the article, certainly, we've touched on some of the things that high school or that USTA can help the high school player, But there's other elements beyond the high school. And because I'm a high school coach, I've ran clubs, I've been a director, I've done everything you can do in tennis. So I have a pretty objective vision of what can be done and what has not been done. Well, one, a USTA junior tournament costs $115 on average to play 2 events. $115. That's absurd, in my opinion. If you're trying to grow the game.
Is that really the average, Dave?
The national average is $100. Here in Utah, it's $115 max to play 2 events in one tournament.
Oh, you mean the entry fee? Oh, yeah. So like
boys singles, boys doubles.
Yeah, got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 events. So, compass draw, double elimination, single elimination, constellation, doesn't matter. That's what, now when I grew up, it was $20, and that seemed high back then. Of course, times change, I understand that. But if the goal is to increase the participation of tournament USTA participation, why are we charging $100 and up to play in a local or regional tournament where you're pricing it out of a lot of kids' parents' pockets?
Well, Dave, the truth of the matter is the USTA is not pricing it. I could say that's a TDM. I could say that. I can speak on their behalf, knowing that they're not the one pricing it. I hear people get shocked what a private lesson costs here. I'm surprised Intermountain is that high for 2 events. Well, you guys are I don't know the seasons there, but if it's indoors, I would say average in our range is about 65, but adding a doubles event is usually maybe like half of that. But the USTA release has a lot. They try to push other products as well, and they refer to them as products that aren't as expensive, and they try to encourage the clubs to do JTT events to get kids to play, and other little nuggets, play days and these things that are relatively inexpensive. But as you make that point, what if you had the floor? What's your suggestion? What's your suggestion to lower that cost or to limit the barrier? Because I can tell you honestly,
if the cost is if the cost is because the director of that tournament wants to make a big profit, you're right. It's not the USTA's call. But there again, if we're going to grow the game, how can the USTA either augment that, supplement that, or do something so that price can come down so more parents can participate their kids? Because that doesn't even include the transportation, food, hotel, whatever of an event. I'm just saying, if the goal is to grow the game, can we bring those numbers down? Again, the article was just about how can the USTA grow the game. I'm just pointing out one of the things when I was growing up, I played the Arcadia, the Huntington Beach, whatever. There were 600 players in a draw, 600 or more. I can remember the Arcadia had 8 pages of 64 in just California, my division. Right? So I'm just saying, if we could get those numbers back up, I don't know what it is in Southern Cal, or, UJ, if it's high. I come from Southern California.
Yeah, it's 55. Last couple tournaments, kids I was coaching, $48, $42, $58, $56, all around that range. But the thing is, they only do one. They don't do doubles. And the parents that drive them out there only have time for them to play singles and a single elimination. There's no back draw, and then they're surprised that they don't even get a shirt. But that $48 for that tournament, it's shirt or no shirt. They're playing for the shirt or not, but it's $48 single elimination. Then you're gone, and parents, parents get mad at me.
Kind of getting in the weeds a little bit. Yeah. Let's pull back a little bit, right, because there's sort of an economics, and the market will always decide kind of a thing. How people price their stuff, that's a really hard thing to get into to try to legislate. One thing I do know is that every section has some sort of a grant program where they can subsidize entry fees for lower income kids. But now, I don't know that we can
not in
solve. Well, in NorCal we do, but
None of the tournaments in SoCal ever
the
ask for
tag
grants.
grant. We have this thing called the tag grant here. But
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
now, but see, it comes back to if the USTA could support things like USTA, like high school tennis again. Because think about that. High school tennis, if you have a proactive coach, they have 20 matches a year, maybe more. And the kids get to play 20 matches, and there's no cost to them except for maybe a uniform and their equipment. I mean, all the travel is paid for by the school. So you've got these 20 matches that can be played. And, one of the worst things that's happening right now is people pay X number of dollars for a match that lasts 45 minutes and they drove 3 hours round trip. And it's a really bad, value for the entertainment dollar. But wait a minute, I've just violated my own thing. I got back in the weeds again, so I have to pull back. Now, so we got to wrap this thing up. So Dave, what are a couple of takeaways or things that we didn't cover from the article that you want to highlight?
I think that the best thing that we could do as far as the USTA and the cooperation of all those involved, I really would love to see the USTA reach out to successful coaches, pros who have established themselves, not just successful, but sustainable success. And get outside their nepotism a little bit. Get away from the internal mechanism that they're only drawing their ideas from, and listen and listen to what's being said with an objective, and quit being so emotionally, like, oh, they're just attacking us. Well, wait a minute. They're not attacking you. They're complaining because there's a reason they're upset. I'd love to see that go the other way and just say, hey, tell us what's on your mind. What can we do? I've had, in all the responses on Facebook, I've had one USDA person say, well, Dave, what do you suggest? That was amazing, because I'm like, that's the first time anybody from the USDA has said, Dave, you're incredibly successful. What have you done that we might be able to do? Other than that, zilch, nothing.
Richard, what do you got?
We're closing. Yeah, I personally asked some of the USDA personnel, like, are they not supposed to comment?
Wait. I'm sorry. Wait. Let me cut. Richard, you kind of froze for me for a second there. So if you could start over, that'd be nice.
Okay. I said I've personally asked some of the USDA personnel if they could comment, and because like Dave said, they usually don't comment on anything Facebook related. I don't know what that's on them. But what I am gonna leave with a nugget here. The USDA, even the $15 million that they said they're allocating is going to programming. So you guys are brilliant minds, have ideas. They have something called, if you didn't hear it, it's a Growing Tennis Together grant. Is anybody familiar with that? Can you raise your hand? Okay, good. Good and bad. That's terrible. So I would say go in and look into that, because I've actually been an applicant for that. I've been a recipient for the grant to help support my initiative. But David, what you're doing there, I mean, not to throw nepotism out there, I would say, if you could, I'm acknowledging, me personally saying that you did a fantastic job what you're doing. I would love to see you reach out, do the Growing Tennis Together grant to apply. The maximum allotment is like $20,000 a year. They have 2 application dates. You probably missed the first one or whatever, but that's something to tap into and get regional grants and to help support what you're doing. I think if you start to you're a great writer, put that writing into grant application, get some funds, they're going to do some follow-up with you, and I think that's the platform there. So I think anybody in this call, or anybody listening, if you Growing Tennis Together grant, if you're doing some great stuff, I've used it for competitive and I've used it for grassroots programs. So I think that's I'm done.
Richard, that's awesome. I really appreciate your comment. UJ, you got anything to bring it home with?
I want to just promote kids on your team that are the number 3, number 4 player on the team. Tell them there's more tennis after high school. Even though I just did a USTA webinar like yesterday with Dr. Luber's from USTA Player Performance, Player Development, and they did the scales of age groups, how some 10-year-olds are excelling better than 12-year-olds, how some 12-year-olds are excelling than some 14-year-olds. Well, those are the number 3, number 4 player on the team, and they get discouraged. Oh, the number 1, number 2 player got a scholarship. How come I didn't get one? Well, you could still develop them into the next level and playing junior college, like Bill, what you're saying. They can develop, and then that's how they keep playing. Because at 10 years down the line, those D1 players, they stop playing. They stop playing. They get burned out. Those high school players that are 3 and 4 and they went to community college, they're either tennis pros and tennis directors. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, and I'm going to chip in now, and I'm going to say, whatever's happened in the past, let it go, and stop finger pointing, and just stop and go, where are we? Where do we want to go? How do we get there? And who do I need to talk to help me get where I want to go? And maybe it's somebody I hadn't thought about talking to before. Maybe there's a relationship needs to be patched up in order for us to all move forward. I mean, I've had to apologize to people, and I've had people apologize to me. And I'll tell you what, I actually think that makes a stronger relationship moving forward, because nobody's perfect. All right, so Dave, bring it all home.
Yeah,
Final words.
You guys gave some great input and made me think even more. I would love to see just some more involvement overall, as we've talked about. I personally run a program that's self-sustaining. I don't need resources from the USTA. I speak on behalf of coaches who do. So I'm never looking for, we raise our own money. We've got our own program where we are self-sufficient in many, many ways. However, I see other schools that can become that way if they were educated or given some leadership. And that's where I would love to see this whole thing come out of this and say, hey, let's just think of ways that we can grow tennis beyond what we're already doing. And if there are things that we can do that's successful, like Rich and UJ, I mean, we've all been there. We've been involved in the sport. We've had different experiences, especially back east where Rich is at, and a closeness where we're spread out in California, Utah, and Arizona is much different. But there are ways that I think USTA can reach out and we can reach out.
So as those were our final words. Now, if you're watching this and you want to talk to any of us, you can reach me at 720degreecoaching@gmail.com. UG, I don't think you want to give your phone number out to people, but you have an email people can reach out?
Yeah, ujtennispro@gmail.com.
All right. Richard? You're on mute.
Facebook's good.
Find Richard Bowie on Facebook. And Dave.
You're both on Facebook, as well as my email is acrprez, like president, PRES, the number 1 at msn.com. I welcome communication and certainly always enjoy networking with all types, USTA, pros, coaches, everyone. It's a wonderful sport. We all know that.
Awesome. I want to thank you guys, because everybody here made, I thought, a really incredible contribution, and we had a lot of divergent views. So that makes for a much better, more valuable conversation. So thank you, Dave, for your article, for creating the impetus for this conversation. In the show notes on YouTube, there will be a link to that article, so you can go back and read that. And hope that everybody will reach out. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you guys. Thanks. Keep in
Good
touch.
to talk.
All right, bye-bye.
All right.